When I was in college, I worked at a 24-hour grocery store. I thought I would never be assigned to the overnight shift because I was a student, but my boss scheduled me for a Tuesday nights from midnight to 8 a.m. Feeling sick about it, I asked my supervisor why I was put on the overnight shift, and he informed me that if I was over 18, I didn't have a choice. Reluctantly, I decided to go through with it just this once and planned to tell my boss I couldn't do it again, due to school commitments. I arrived at the store at 12 o'clock and took over from my co-worker, Amanda. Many lights were turned off to save on electricity, but to my surprise, there were still customers doing quick midnight shopping runs. As the night progressed, the number of customers decreased. Around 2 a.m., the store was completely dead, and I started to feel incredibly bored, wondering if there were other employees in the building. I noticed a bald man who appeared to be a manager passing by the front registers. I approached him and asked if he was the manager. He came over and asked if it was my first day on the job, to which I explained it was my first night shift. After a brief conversation, he asked me to go to the back warehouse to organize the pallets while he watched the front. As I made my way to the back, I saw him tampering with the entrance door, as if he were locking it. In the warehouse, I encountered another man wearing a manager's vest named Rob, who introduced himself as the night manager. Confused, I mentioned the bald guy I had just spoken to, but Rob informed me he was the only manager on duty. Before we could investigate further, all the lights in the store suddenly turned off. Rob instructed me to wait in the warehouse while he checked what was happening. Alone in the dark, I heard a door opening from inside the warehouse. Panicked, I hurried out quietly and went to the front of the store, searching for Rob. Unable to find him, I tried to leave through the exit but realized it was locked. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching behind me and turned around, expecting to see Rob. Instead, it was the bald man. I quickly left the store with him following behind. Once outside, Rob immediately called the police, informing them of an armed man who had locked himself inside the store and my belief that he intended to harm me in the warehouse. I waited in my car and witnessed several police cars. Arriving at the store, I decided to leave. And upon returning to work, my supervisor informed me of the security footage. It revealed the suspicious actions of the bald man, including locking the doors, cutting the lights, and heading straight to the warehouse where he had instructed me to go. Luckily, he had left through the emergency exit before the police arrived, and his identity remained unknown. After that incident, I never worked an overnight shift again. Default Texty spoke with my boss about it, and I continued working at the job for a few more months. The experience left me shaken, but I was grateful nothing worse had happened. I used to be employed as a night restock worker at a supermarket located in a somewhat rural town. The supermarket, known as Rogers, was the largest and most prominent in the area. My shift began immediately after the store closed at 10 p.m., and I would work until the latest 3 a.m., restocking shelves and organizing everything for the following operating day. During these nighttime shifts, I had the responsibility of holding the keys to the store. There would typically be a team of 2, including myself and either Terry Carter or Alfonso. On this particular night, I was supposed to work with Terry. Upon arriving at the store, I entered through the back area where the inventory was stored and where we kept our belongings. Terry hadn't arrived yet, so I left the back door slightly open with a door stopper in place, expecting him to join me soon. Without any sign of Terry, after another half hour, I decided to check the back area once again. He wasn't there, but I noticed that the back door was shut. Assuming Terry was already inside, I opened the door and noticed that the door stopper was outside, which struck me as odd since I had placed it tightly under the door. Calling out Terry's name, my voice echoed through the room, but there was no response. I decided to call him on the phone, and he answered sounding like he was in bed. I asked him if he was at work, to which he replied that he wasn't coming in due to illness. A chill ran through me, as I mentioned someone kicking the door stopper off, but Terry dismissed it, suggesting that it might have come undone by itself. Given that no one else was scheduled to work that night, I thanked him and hung up. However, I remained uncertain about the door stopper incident, as I had securely placed it under the door. I quickly scanned the back of the store to ensure no one else was present, and not finding anyone, I resumed my work. A sense of unease lingered as I continued restocking the bread aisle. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise coming from across the shopping floor, leaving me certain that someone must be inside the store. Rising from my kneeling position, I headed to the central aisle that intersected all the others. Standing there momentarily, I spotted a man dressed in black walking through the dairy aisle on the opposite side of the store, looking in my direction. My heart sank, as it felt reminiscent of the scene from the movie Science, where an alien passes by a birthday party. Trying to stay rational, I hastened down the central aisle and called out "Excuse me" loudly. I glanced left into every aisle I passed, assuming he had gone towards the front of the store. In one of those aisles, I found him waiting at the end, facing me entirely. As soon as he noticed me, he disappeared from sight, moving in the direction I had just come from. I shouted "Excuse me" once more and hurried down that aisle to catch up with him. Before getting a good look at his face, he vanished behind a shelf. The situation was becoming increasingly unsettling. I decided that my wage was not worth dealing with this and went outside to sit in my car, where I promptly called my boss. Upon informing him about the presence of an unidentified person in the store, he advised me to either remove him if possible or call the police. Considering the risk, I chose to call 911 instead of attempting to physically confront the intruder. I waited in my car until a police car arrived, and I met the officer, requesting him to accompany me inside. We searched the premises together, eventually finding the man once again, standing creepily in one of the aisles. Following the police officer's command, he complied and was handcuffed. He had an eerie demeanor, continuously smiling at me and licking his lips. His eyes carried massive bags, and the only words he spoke were in response to the police officer, claiming he was searching for a snack. The way he stared at me with that menacing, threatening smile remained etched in my memory. The police officer escorted him back outside to his car. Afterward, I continued my work, but needless to say, I never left any of the doors open again.